Hello and welcome to About Books. On this edition of the show, we draw up into the newly opened Naked Lunch Cafe, inspired by Beat Generation and postmodernist writer William Burroughs. Later in the show, I will be chatting to Ian Udin-Sloan and Howard White, former bus drivers who've jointly written a novel, Being Morose, a parody of British detective crime fiction. But first tonight, Gaelle Legrand visited the Naked Lunch Cafe for About Books to find out about the ideas, ethos and plans for the venue.
It's a place for people to meet on Swiftown Road. We will be opening as a bar in a few months' time. Started off at daytime, we're open 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. And then we'll be extending our hours later in the year. Special events, vegan nights, naked supper clubs, book clubs, lots of community projects. The project started because I've been personally interested in alternative business organisations and more ethical and more fairer ways of doing business that involve more people. A friend of mine owned the place previously. It was 8 days a week in Cafe Kerouac. It was a popular student place, and he became ill. And we didn't realise at the time, but he was actually quite seriously ill. So he had to take some time off, and rather than completely lose the business, we decided to form a cooperative and put the principles to the test. So we got customers, friends together, people who were interested, organised a meeting, and then said, look, here's what we propose to do. We want to form a cooperative, take over the business, give it a bit of a refurb and keep Jed involved. Unfortunately, he was suffering from bone cancer and he didn't make it. But we'd already started the process, and it's kind of it's become a bit of a homage to him, really, because a lot of the ideals and a lot of the positive concepts that we incorporated were kind of perpetuated by him originally. It was a very friendly, very open place that already served the community. So the principles were already there, it just wasn't actually cooperative at the time. He was an avid reader of literature, poetry, very, very well read, and he loved the American beat poets, big fan of Kerouac and Cassidy and Ginsberg.
So I used to come in here for my breakfast and I used to talk to Jed about the Beat Generation. It was Cafe Kerouac at the time, and he used to have pictures of Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac and Gregory Corso and Lawrence Ferlinghetti. So I used to sort of chat to him about all of these people who were his heroes. And with me being a writer myself, it made good sense. We had to sort of take the building and really just rip it apart. It was in quite a bad state, but you see where we are today, and it's changed quite a bit.
It's completely different, yeah. It's all been completely ripped out and cleaned and painted, and it's all really fresh and a lot more vibrant in here, it feels, I think, yeah. Well, basically, I used to work here before it was the Naked Lunch. It was my first ever job. And unfortunately, the guy that owned it, he passed away, which was really, really tragic. But then some of his friends sort of took over, Paul took over and decided to make it into a co-op. And I think the guy that owned it had a share in it and everything. So he's sort of still part of it in a way, which I think is really lovely. So I've got that connection, but then at the same time, I really love the whole co-op idea. I think especially in this day and age when it's such a extreme capitalist society, it's nice to have a little bit more control in that kind of way.
All of the people who work here are members of the cooperative, so they have a vested interest in the business model and in the business working, and they all get a share of the profits at the end of the year. Cooperatives are really, really successful business models all around the world, and I think that in the UK they seem to have lost the way. We've got great cooperatives doing really, really well, but people don't seem to know about them. People seem to be in the dark. You can go and study an economics degree and you come back and you don't even know anything about them. But if you go to Germany, you go to Spain, go to South America, Scandinavia, it seems to be more in the public knowledge of how relevant they are, which is a shame because they started in the UK, with the Rochdale pioneers that are a big part of the Industrial Revolution and, a really important part of workers' rights and how people created fairer businesses. I think problems within certain aspects of the cooperative organisations in the UK have created a bit of mistrust or bad feeling, or alternatively people just don't know about them. They literally don't understand the model at all. You'll ask 100 people in the street what's a cooperative, very few of them will know. There's a multitude of different ways. You can have different types of cooperatives. You can have a workers' co-op where everyone's a worker. This is a multi-stakeholder cooperative, so the people who are part of the co-op are individuals, groups of people or organisations, and we needed to do it that way because we needed to raise finance to spend money refurbishing the business. They're all different. It works with any business model, but the difference is that you operate in a more ethical way. You have a set of rules that you have to adhere to. You tend to be paid the same, or you use a basic wage multiplier where the highest paid person only gets paid a multiplier of the lowest paid person, as opposed to most big companies where the CEO is often getting 1,000 times more than his workers, which is a huge difference. Some co-ops like Tuma pay everyone exactly the same wage, but it's a really good wage. Others have a 4, 5, 6 times wage multiplier. It's just a much fairer way of doing business. They're also massively successful. They traditionally outperform private business, which is, people don't seem to realise this, but they perform really, really well because there isn't some guy buying private jets and yachts with all of the money. The money gets used to make the business stronger, and they invest in other businesses as well. So we've got a really wide selection of people from 18 years old right up to 69 years old. We've got doctors, professors, writers, musicians, roofers, surveyors.
Well, I was recently made redundant from Cancer Research UK and was looking for opportunities. It was very serendipitous. I was driving past one day, saw a couple of the members. They were actually friends of mine. I've known them for a long time, including the chef, James. And just called them up and said, what's going on? Why you're in an empty unit on Smithdown Road? And they explained that Paul had started the cooperative in memory of Jed, and I just thought it was an interesting idea, and because I was at a crossroads I decided to jump on board. After talking to Paul and some of the other members, it was very apparent that we'd come across the same struggles in terms of trying to make our businesses as musicians and things like that work. So after a few coffees and some long conversations, I was sort of convinced that the cooperative model is the way to do that, to help the community, to help generate some income, to get a fantastic business up and running, and then hopefully, start a lot more co-ops in the future. I invested £1,000 initially and got an extra little bit from sweat equity, helping to paint, helping to lots of things, lots of different DIY sort of stuff, which isn't my strong point, but you just got to muck in and get it done. For me, it was just the stake and the chance to get a little bit of a return on the stake, but obviously as I've got to know the guys and everybody working here, it looks like that my experience from the retail background is gonna help promote the business and like I said, get things running efficiently and smoothly. So I'll be, behind the counter, doing service, training staff members, and yeah, moving forward with that.
It's very interesting about the naked lunch in the sense that it was Burroughs one time when he was drunk with Kerouac, and Kerouac was telling him a story which involved the naked lust, and Burroughs misheard it, and called it the naked lunch. But Burroughs, he's an interesting character because the way he always used to think of himself as a medical sort of person, even in the depths of his drug addiction. And it's very interesting, I was just about to tell you, a good friend of mine who's a neurologist, a member of the CoOp as well, he's just written a book on Burroughs called Mentored by a Madman. And that's particularly why, and the line he takes is that even in his neurological training, you have to take risks. You have to take certain sort of journeys outside the prescribed medical route to understand neurological conditions. Burroughs, for him, took those journeys, not for the same neurological purpose, but certainly took the journeys. But Burroughs, even in the Armies of the Red Knight or all of his great sort of trilogies, always sees himself as some sort of medical sort of voyeur. So with the Naked Lunch and this sort of cafe being really sort of simple, we thought it was a good title.
I suppose Naked Lunch, first of all, it's a memorable title, okay? Interestingly, some of the old guys from the pub down the road think it's going to be a topless bar. Obviously, they're going to be really disappointed because so it's not, obviously. I think it's a snappy title, it's memorable, it's got a link to Jack Kerouac, and the previous place was called Kerouac's. Also, Burroughs was a bit of a subversive, bit anti-establishment, his books were banned, and I think that, but there's an element of, look, we're doing something different here, and that's really, it all ties in, it's well with what we're trying to do. We're not trying to smash the system, it's a bit of a silent revolution. We won't be playing football on the TV, we don't have TVs, it's books, conversation, let's go back and communicate with each other.
I'm here talking to Howard White and Ian Udin-Sloan about their detective spoof being Morose. Welcome, boys, to the show.
Thank you very much.
How you doing?
Fantastic. Wonderful, thank you.
It's great to have you here. So tell us a little bit about how you two got together and started writing.
It was my dad's fault. My dad introduced us. I had recently lost a job, and my dad offered to get me a job starting driving buses, which he did at the time, and he introduced me to this lunatic, saying he had the same sense of humour as me. We're both big Spike Milligan fans.
Hey.
So there we go.
Cool. And when was that?
1994.
1994.
Yeah.
And did you start writing straight away, or?
I think Ian left before we started writing. He
No.
left the depot I was working in.
No, we were definitely still working. I know it was after I left Laird Street that we definitely, that was when we had the little break, wasn't it?
That's right.
Shout out the Laird Street depot.
Yay.
Good
Yes.
job.
Yep.
Way. So you kind of started chatting about liking Spike Milligan, is that how it happened, and then you decided to write together. I think that there was a particular point in your family lives you decided you needed to write in order to keep sane. Say a little bit about that.
I think that's probably fair.
That's a nice way of putting
Yeah,
it. Yes.
there was a lot going on at the time, so it was great to have the excuse to get together as much as anything on a regular basis.
Fathers, is that right?
Well,
Yeah.
that came later actually, didn't it?
Okay.
It's a little bit later.
So it was kind of like a refuge from family life, some guy time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had you both written independently before?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been writing probably since as far back as I was able to write without any success whatsoever.
Any particular genres that appealed? Did you write short fiction, or have you always stuck with the novel?
Radio scripts.
Oh, really?
My dad
That's
brought me up
interesting.
as, well, it's my dad's fault as much as it's Ian's dad's fault. He introduced me to something called the Goon Show,
I know, yeah.
which these days is a bit mild and a bit not very anarchistic, but at the time it was quite a breakthrough. I was totally taken in by it. I thought, I want to do this.
Yeah,
I want to be like this. I can make people laugh by writing things.
and that's your main aim.
That was my aim.
We
We started this as a television script,
Yeah.
and then thought, maybe this isn't going to work, maybe it's too complicated, and Ian said, why don't we try it as a novel? And I pulled a big face. And We wrote it as a novel. I'm still pulling a face.
So being Morose is obviously a play on words in terms of Inspector Morse.
Yes.
And there's another individual within it, and it's set in Oxfordshire and in a dystopian parallel world. And you've also got Harris, who I'm guessing is a pastiche of Lewis.
Yes.
You're only the second person to get that right.
Exactly, I'm the second person to read it, not you.
You're the second person who actually held it in their hands, I suppose.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what you've done to Inspector Morse.
We've made him a raging alcoholic, an extremely bad-tempered
He
man.
was.
Actually, to be fair.
He was.
I think Colin Dexter created this wonderful character,
Fabulous.
absolutely brilliant character.
My dad introduced me, since we're all talking about our dads, my dad introduced me to Inspector Morse, gave me a deep love.
Absolutely, and he is an amazing character, and that the whole storyline, it's a wonderful world to drop into. But what we've done is we've taken this undercurrent of his love of the alcohol, which always got on Lewis's nerves to a degree within the stories.
He was always having pints of orange juice and lemonade, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah, well, he was always having to drive the car as well, wasn't he, whenever he'd had a drink. So we've taken that element and turned it up to 11, as they say on Spinal Tap, and we've made it that he's not just fond of a drink, he lives for the drink, and he'll abuse anybody who gets between him and a drink.
Hence the drink on the front cover.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and fags.
Yes.
Did Inspector Morse smoke? That's something I don't...
Lewis did.
Lewis, okay. Is that...
They seem to have cut those bits out of a lot of the repeats, but Lewis did smoke.
So you've made him swear a great deal as well. There's a lot of...
I don't think we made him. I think the character started to take.
words,
I think the character started to take over.
It feels a bit sometimes like, the old thing with the ventriloquist dummy.
Yes.
That you can put any words you want into the ventriloquist dummy's mouth and get away with this. And that's kind of the way things are with Morose. That's he can say all the things that people would never dream of saying to anybody else in reality.
Kind of falling down quality to it.
Yeah.
You know, the alcohol or something has made him snap, and he presumably in the TV drama particularly, you can see him trying to control himself and not saying what he'd like to say. But what you've done is free him to do that.
Yeah.
Released that completely.
Release the demon.
Working in the industry that Ian used to work in, and I still do work in, you get a lot of interesting uses of the English language. I love that sort of thing.
Yeah.
People can get really upset about it in the wrong context, but I need to point out that what we've done is a comedy. It's supposed to be funny. We're not supposed to be taken too seriously.
No, that's right. It's a spoof, isn't it?
I was absolutely delighted when somebody sent one back on the grounds they didn't like all the swearing in it.
Really?
I thought we'd made it.
It's like Inspector Morse meets Viz, isn't it?
Yes,
That's exactly what we wanted it to
And that's
be.
what you were hoping
with a good
for.
dose of perhaps Spike Milligan's Q series.
Okay,
and
yeah.
maybe with that extra, I don't know, who's the Scottish comedian?
Billy Connolly?
More than that, ramp it up a bit.
Don't know, you got me.
Fella with a beard.
Billy Connolly.
in my head.
William McGonagall. Yeah.
But inspired by some contemporary laughter.
Frankie Boyle.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Frankie
right,
Boyle,
Boyle,
sorry,
yeah.
I should have thought of that.
Now, you
before.
deliberately, obviously, didn't set it in Liverpool because you wanted to keep it Oxfordshire based because of Morse.
Yes.
Would you say that Liverpool manages to make its way in somehow?
Well, we quite deliberately had a point in it where Harris gets lost, throws a sat-nav out the window and ends up in Birkenhead, which is as close as we could get it at that point, and that was quite good, having him sworn at by a policeman in Birkenhead. We quite enjoyed having that bit. Yeah.
I think Wolverhampton is the nearest we've got after that.
But in terms of the spirit of Liverpool,
Oh,
would
it's
you say
very
that
much.
this is a city that's founded on the ability to laugh when things are
Definitely.
actually really tough?
I hope so.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think so.
We're both
think-
Liverpool born and bred, and it's very much that humour that comes through. Or Merseyside born and bred, at least.
What was Liverpool?
You're Liverpool born, absolutely.
You don't
We're
think
born in the same
Yes.
hospital
You
within
don't
a
think
few
I'm
weeks
some
of each
sort of foreigner, do you?
other. Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any favourite characters other than Inspector Morose?
In the book or
the
in
book?
general?
No, in the book. Let's talk a bit more about the book in the book.
I love what we've done with Colin Weird.
Okay, yes.
It's based on Strange.
Yeah.
One of the very few criticisms I would have of Colin Dexter's work is he never really developed the character of Strange that strongly. He would just
sort of
appear.
the straight guy, the
Exactly.
kind of standard book
he would just point him in a direction and disappear. Yeah. And we thought, well, we're sure we could do something more with that, so we've made him this very dark, satanic character, Dark Lord, and still retaining that element of saying matey. Whenever he's putting Morose down, he uses the word matey, but he's got this dark presence, this demonic force. There's something lurking there, isn't there?
Gradually he's starting to fail. He was trapped in a gas lamp.
Yes, that's right.
In the last story.
Yeah.
In the book.
And what are you writing at the moment?
Book 2.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, we've only started fairly recently. We're again planning that there'll be probably about 6 stories. We've got an outline roughly for each of those. We've started off with the first one, which is going to be Morose is in hospital.
Okay.
And while he's in hospital, some murders start happening there. And of course, because he's on the scene, he's asked to do some investigation while he's under the care of the hospital.
Having started with the first one, we thought we'd follow it up with the second one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice order to
It was a good order to do things, but then we're going to go on to the 8th just to upset people.
In terms of any serious issues that are being debated, obviously in a comedic way, are there any points you want to make about law and order or crime or current austerity or how we're living at the moment?
I could pick up a newspaper and get very, very angry very, very quickly.
Yeah, there is a kind of...
If I wanted to switch on,
here.
if I need, and I do need to, in order to
survive,
to write,
yeah.
In order to go into work, in order to come home again and feel as if I'm actually doing something. If I wanted to do that, I'd just switch on the internet, look at the BBC News, pick up a newspaper, see the state of the world, see the political biases, see what people are saying behind each other's backs, see what people are showing me as news, and I just go mad.
So this
I can't
is really
stand
kind of like a solution in and of itself.
That's the top of a pressure cooker.
Thank you for coming in and sharing that with us today. It's been fab
Thank
to
you very
chat
much.
to you. Good luck with the other stories. So that's Howard White and Ian Udin-Sloan being Morose. Thanks for watching About Books. We'll see you again soon.